Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Seetal. You're watching Seetal MD. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made a cubby house, which can be used both for indoors as well as outdoors. Now, before I start, I have to let you know that I actually attempted to make an outdoor cubby house, and it was really big, but I was not happy with how I made the frame. Like, I joined the frame using L-shaped brackets or just any brackets that I found lying around the house. However, the finish was just not nice, and I didn't think it would stand the weight of the kids running around. So I decided to tear it apart and make an indoor cubby house, like a little bench, so to say, where my kids can sit down, read a book, and as well as, do their pretend play, stuff like that. First things first, I made cuts for the bench, the seat bench. I made it 100 centimeters by 40 centimeters, and then I cut some 2x3 wood to fit underneath the bench as support for the bench. I used my brad nailer to kind of nail the wood in before I screw the wood properly to each other, just because I wanted to kind of be really precise of where, you know, the kind of the support was as a to the in relation to the plywood. I have no idea how to explain this any better, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was square. So I thought it would be better to brad nail them in first and then go ahead and use my pocket hole screws to attach them. So for this project, I used pocket hole screws to attach every single joint, just because I found that if I use pocket holes, they would be more professional, more sturdy, just it'll stay stronger. And I didn't want this project to turn up like I did the last one, where I just abandoned that cubby house for like months on end. And then I cut more 2x3 wood to make the side frames, and side frame is basically the same as the bottom frame, but it's just that I didn't frame up all four corners, just three corners. And I again used my pocket hole screws and made sure to put my wood under a straight piece of another piece of wood, just because I wanted to make sure that the joints were square. Before I moved further to attach the side frames, I decided to add another support in the middle of the bench seat, just for extra support, and also because I had cut out extra pieces of wood that I didn't need, so why not use it here? Attaching the side frames was actually quite easy. This pocket holes, like, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. Like, I already had the tool. So this is what it looked like, and then I went ahead and made the miter cut at 45-degree angles for the top. This is where I really struggle a lot, because I was trying to get like I didn't have a drill that was long enough to make good holes, and I didn't actually have a screw that was long enough. I, however, just used whatever I had in hand. But if I could do this part again, I would use, or if I could give you advice, I would recommend using a longer screw, and definitely maybe enforcing that with an angle bracket. So here, to ensure, to make sure that my cut was just nice, where I can place this angular piece on top of the side frames, I measured from one end of the triangle to the other end to be 100 centimeters. That way it would lay on top of the frames, right? Like, it will lay nice and square. However, I was wrong. What I should have done was to measure the inside of the frame to the other inside of, one side of the inside of the triangle to the other inside of the triangle to be 100 centimeters, so that I will have an overhang on my frame. You'll see as I move on to the next. Let me show you what I mean. See how I have now the overhang, or the excess of the wood on the inner side of the frame. I didn't want it to be on the inner side of the frame. I want it to be on the outside of the frame, like so. So I had to make like another triangle, and luckily I had enough wood to do it. And this way I could cut the excess off, and I would have like a flush finish on the outside where I can attach my plywood, and it will be flush on the inside as well. So I wanted it flush like inside and out. And then I went ahead and added another support in between the two triangles to make it nice and sturdy. Lastly, I had to measure out the outside of the cubby house so that I can cut plywood to measure and attach them on the outside of the cubby house to make it nice and neat. Before I added the plywood, I added lots of glue, and I smoothed that glue out just because I wanted it to be nice and strongly attached to the plywood, and it's also just good practice to do it, I guess. I attached the plywood to the side of my frame, the side frame, by using just my brad nailer, no screws used here at all, because the glue and the brad nail would have done a good job as it is. And then I went ahead and just finished off the rest of the sides of the side frames and just attached plywood. By the way, if you're wondering, the plywood that I used was 7mm thickness. I thought this was good enough, and you can actually use this for outdoor as well because it's plywood. I did not use any MDF here, so everything is plywood. Once you paint it, prime it and paint it for outdoor use, it will actually last years left outdoors. There's no problem with it. Gave it a good sanding down, and you can see some gaps at the triangle, from the triangle to the straight edge, the side frame. I covered all these edges with lots and lots and lots of wood filler. And then when I came back to the project the next day, it was all nice and dry, and I had to, of course, sand it down again to get all that excess wood filler out. For the back of the cubby house, I used some pallets that I had collected a very long time ago, and I had kept it out in the rain. And I guess the rain did it good because the weather made it easier. The weathered pallets made it easier for me to pry open the pallets and remove all the nails and bits and bobs and things like that. And then I cut it to length, about 100 centimeters, so that I could fit it at the back of the cubby house like so. I used glue first, of course, and then I brad nailed them just really lightly, but then after that I went in and drilled pilot holes before screwing my boards to the back, because I wanted to make sure that the boards were nicely secured to the back and it wouldn't come open, because if it's just brad nails, when the kids jumped into the cubby house, they would push the the back out, so I didn't want that to happen. As for the last triangle bit on the top, I had a leftover piece of plywood, so I cut that plywood to size after drawing, kind of tracing what was the triangle that I needed, so that I made a good, proper cut. And then I just used my brad nail, as I mentioned before, because it's plywood. I didn't really use any screws, and this really won't come apart because it's at the top of the cubby house, so the kids won't really reach that high to kind of hit into it, so it comes apart. When I finished the cubby house, the top of the cubby house didn't really join together, and I didn't want to use like it's impossible really to put lots of wood filler to fill the space in, so I just cut like a thin piece of plywood, used my brad nailer to put it in, to nail it in place, and then I went over the whole thing with wood filler, and as you will see in the next clip. I will not recommend you using your hands for this part, but my wood filler was kind of dry, and just because I had to use like a lot of wood filler to fill in the gaps, I kind of just went for it and smoothed it out a little bit with my hands, but I did go over the whole thing with the spatula, so it's nice and smooth. But then you know what, I did have to sand off the excess anyway, so it didn't really matter. So I went ahead and filled out all the gaps that I found before I sanded it down, ready for painting, of course. I only painted the bottom half of the cubby house white. I used this Annie Sloan white chalk paint, which is just so amazing. Like if you have ever used Annie Sloan chalk paint, you will, it's so heavily pigmented, you don't need a lot. A little goes a long way, and it's just so amazing to get the paint, you know, like I'm still using the same brush and I'm like going and going, and it's just amazing. Anyways, I'll leave a link below if you want to get the Annie Sloan white chalk paint. That's the link where I got my paint from. And after painting half of the bottom of the half cubby house with white paint, the reason I painted it white was because I wanted to do some doodling on it. Like I wanted to doodle some monsters on it, and it would be easier to doodle on white paint than to doodle on a normal background and then, or a black background and then paint it white. So as you can see, I didn't paint the back part of it, but I later went ahead and painted the back part all black. And I also allowed my kids to do whatever art they wanted to do on the back part of it. So for the doodling, I used Pinterest. I just went on Pinterest, searched doodle monsters, and found some really cute pictures. And then I picked whichever was easy for me to draw. So this was me picking doodles that were done by different artists on Pinterest. I just picked ones that I thought I could draw, and it was really easy. I used the black paint that I would later use to paint the entire cubby house black. It's just normal latex wood paint, and this is how it turned out. Like I really like how it turned out. It's a bit messy, you can see paint dripping here and there, but overall I love how it is, and frankly I could stare at it for hours. The last thing to do after painting the whole cubby house black was to attach the legs. I got these legs from our local hardware store for $6 a leg. It might be a little expensive in some countries, but I thought this was like the cheapest legs I could get. And also I needed something that was sturdy, that could hold the cubby house up, because I wanted to use it as a bench, which is why I actually added the legs. If you're not using it as a bench, then I suppose you don't really need the legs. Ta-da! I'm so happy with how it turned out. I decorated the cubby house with a handmade cushion for the seat, and I also bought some cushions, ready-made cushions from IKEA. They were selling really cheap, and overall, like, it gave a really nice cozy little nook for my kids to sit and read a book in. So far they're just using it to play video games in, but it's school holiday, so I guess it's okay. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like it, share it with your friends and family, and do leave me a comment below if you have something, a specific question for me. Also, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification button as well. I had a lot of fun making this cubby house, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks guys, bye.